Chapter 4. Alice Makes a Deal. I was cleaning up after dinner a week or so later when the doorbell rang. Before I turned off the faucet and dried my hands, it rang a second time, and while I was going down the stairs, a third. So I knew before I reached the door that my ex-husband was paying me a visit. David is always in a hurry, and he has virtually no impulse control. These are not his most grievous faults. "David," I said when opening the door, "what a pleasant surprise." He was already past me heading up the stairs, so he failed to appreciate my ironic smile. "When are you going to get rid of those glass panes?" he asked, referring, I suppose, to my front door. "The gate outside provides enough protection, I think, and the door has architectural value," I pointed out. A locked wrought iron gate nearly 2 stories high is the outer entrance to my building. Up a few stairs are the doors to the flats. 2 of my neighbors have replaced their doors. The glass is original, with entries that are more solid and secure. Also, perfectly utilitarian and incredibly ugly. "You have no idea what has architectural value," he said, with an authority derived from all his designer friends. "You're just too cheap to replace it." "I am not cheap," I answered, "and I'm quite safe, thank you for worrying. I have the very best bolt lock on that door, and it's wired by an electric security firm. The rest I leave to the grace of God, and the kindness of strangers, no doubt." He was in the living room, looking behind the drapes and blinds at my windows. "Which one did he come in through?" "He who?" I asked, though I had a pretty good idea he and Sally had been chatting. "Oh, please, Sally told me about the break-in." This seemed like a good moment to resume martini drinking. I drifted into the kitchen and fetched the vodka from the refrigerator, along with an orange to provide zest. "Would you like one?" I asked, hearing his footsteps behind me. "What I'd like is to have your attention." "Then give me a moment to make a drink and you'll have a nice chat. Light a fire, won't you?" I could feel the steam coming off him, but the footsteps retreated. I took a deep breath, a long sip, and joined him. "So," I said, taking a corner of the couch, "you have my attention." "When did this happen?" "I don't remember exactly," I said. "More than a week ago. Maybe 2. "Why didn't you call me?" "The police were handier," I said, "and they had guns." "The police came? What did they do?" I summarized briefly. "They looked around. They found nothing. They took a description. They left." "A description of the burglar?" David exclaimed. "A dreadful word, but it applies." "Yes, they could see me." "You saw the burglar? You were here?" "Sally didn't tell you that?" "I guess. Yes, I was here." "You weren't, you know, he didn't rape me?" "No. We had a rather civilized conversation, actually, and then I thought it would be wise if one of us left. He refused to go, so I did." I felt Shadow hop onto the back of the couch and take up his usual spot over my shoulder. "And the guy didn't take anything?" "No." He could have at least taken the cat." I ran a finger around the rim of my drink. "Perhaps now you'll see the sense of getting a nice large dog for your protection," David went on. "Of course, you'd have to get rid of whatever you call that cat. Or I suppose you could let the dog take care of him. I don't imagine he'd be more than a bite or 2 for the right dog." I took a long sip and let the vodka burn my throat a bit before I swallowed. "All right," he said, joining me on the couch. "You're attached to the cat. I supposed middle-aged old maids need something to cuddle." Wanting so badly to hiss myself, I didn't notice at first that the sound came from over my shoulder. Then Shadow leaped into the space between David and me and arched his back, repeating the hiss and adding a bit of a growl at the end. David leaped to his feet and moved towards the fireplace. "When did he become dangerous?" I gave Shadow a soothing stroke. "Go finish your dinner, Shadow. I can handle this." Obediently, he marched off, but not without scratching the carpet in front of David, like a cat who had just finished using the litter box and wanted to make sure he had gotten all of the nasty stuff off his back paws. Aw, shit. Shit's getting real. He's not dangerous, David. He doesn't like to see me upset. He doesn't like people who upset me. Why is it the cat owners talk about their pets as if they were human beings, for God's sake? He doesn't know what upsets means. And food is the only thing he likes. He's a wild thing after all. Well, he behaves quite civilly with my other guests. David smiled. Yes, other guests. That reminds me. Or I suppose it's the other guest, singular. I can't imagine you attracting more than one. You'll have to be clearer, I said. Oh, please, Alice, he said, joining me on the couch again. That feigned innocence was rather charming in your youth, but you're more than a bit past all that, don't you think? I have several other guests in my home, I said evenly. You'll have to specify which guest you have in mind. The guest who shares your bed, he said, with the slyest grin. I assume it's a man. That's always been your preference. And yours. In fact, over the years, David had far more men in his bed than I had in mine, which was the original reason for our divorce. After we split, I thought of a number of even better reasons to leave him. Are you offering to share? He asked. Do you think I'd like the fellow? I'm not sure, I said, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't care for you. Pure hetero, he said, with the merest pure hetero, he said with the merest hint of a question at the end. You know, you're not always the best judge. I stood. You must be on your way somewhere interesting, I said, and I don't want to keep you. He stood, and for a moment we were face to face, closer than we'd been in years. Pure hetero, I think, he said. You have to look at a woman who's enjoying more than 8 hours of sleep every night. You look well pleasured, better than you've looked in a long time. What happened next wasn't a total shock, only because I saw the surprise register on David's face before I heard the familiar voice. She's quite beautiful, the man of my dreams said. The most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and terribly polite. We have plans, you see, and she's too sweet to tell you you're keeping us. David was pale now. Plans? He said. I felt possessive hands on my shoulder. Do you suppose you could show yourself out? The man of my dreams asked. David flew down the stairs, and I followed to make sure the lock was thrown, wondering how long it would take him to find his cell phone and whom he would call first with the news. The man of my dreams was standing at the top of the stairs when I turned. Don't be upset, he said. I'll go if you get upset. I know you don't like my being this way. I just couldn't bear listening to him carry on like that. Anyway, I never liked him. I knew all the reasons why I should send him away, but I also knew how grateful I was for what he had done, how safe and cared for I'd felt when his hands touched my shoulders. As I reached the top of the stairs, he moved aside, but our bodies brushed as I passed him. I shivered. You're cold, he said. Maybe I should put another log on the fire. He led me to the couch and settled me there, pulling a lap robe off a nearby chair, and tucking it around me. Is that better? Yes, I said, hating to think how much. You might as well sit down too. He sat beside me. Though our bodies didn't touch, I could feel his presence next to me. For a while, we just watched the fire. I'm grateful for what you did before, I said at last. David has always been a trial. He doesn't mean to be mean. At least, I don't think he does, but he certainly can be. You put him in his place quite neatly. It was lovely. I can't tell you how I savored it. Me too, he said. I've been wanting to do that for years, watching him come and go from this place as if he owned it, owned you, treating you so badly, to say nothing of the lack of respect he shows for me. The worst is he makes you feel bad, and I hate it when you feel bad. I didn't think that there were any disadvantages to being a cat until this. Yes, I suppose. I cut him off. Well, Anyway, I wanted you to know that it was rather nice to have a man around the house. It, I meant it only as a statement of fact, but I quickly saw from the look on his face that he was reading an invitation in my words. You're not upset? I'm not upset. I could stay, he said, confirming my intuition. I mean, I could stay this way, being a man. At least, I'm pretty sure I can. I sipped my drink, buying time. I certainly didn't want to hurt this man's feelings after he'd been so kind, but having him stay raised a lot of issues. Aside from the obvious concern, I still didn't know who this man was or whether he represented a threat to me. There was also an underlying problem, my reluctance, I suppose, to have a man around all the time. And yet, I didn't want him to leave for good. As foolhardy as it might have been, I was growing to like him. He continued to stare at me, as though if he looked at me hard enough, I'd say what he wanted to hear. I don't really need a roommate, you know, I began. I have Shadow, of course, and he's all the company I need. I'm thinking maybe you could visit from time to time, come and go, so to speak. You still don't understand, he said, with an edge of irritation. It's such a simple thing. I don't see why you're having a problem with it. I am Shadow. I'm already your roommate. It's quite a question of how I appear. I chewed my lip for a moment, wishing he could behave like an ordinary man, wishing he could forget this nonsense about being a cat, and at the same time, wishing we could just move a little bit closer or put his arm around my shoulder. Ah, yes, that's right, I said. You say you're really Shadow. My cat turned into a man. But you see, I don't think I'm ready to accept that. Not right now, anyway, or even to think about it for a very long time, because then I might have to decide what to believe. I guess it would be easier to think of you as someone, a friend, a very good friend, who comes by from time to time to visit. Yes, I said, without working it out as I talked. That would be perfect. He looked puzzled. Which means I'll have to call you something. Do you have a name? Of course I have a name, he said, but you probably don't want to think about that for very long either. He left the couch and stalked around the living room, which was lighted only by the remnants of our fire. I could call you. I spotted a book I cherish on the end table. Samwise, I suppose. Did you ever read Lord of the Rings? He was Frodo's best friend. In any case, do you suppose that would do? He stood in the doorway into the dining room carrying Shadow's very ordinary old scratching post, carrying it in one hand and raising and lowering it like a barbell, starting to laugh. You look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I said. He didn't share my amusement. Then I guess you should call me Arnold. He was holding the post in both hands, in a way that seemed just a little menacing, at least combined with the look on his face. Maybe you could put that down now, I said. He did. So let's say I'll call you Samwise then. Sam for short, I said. At least until we agree on a real name for you. I'm too tired to talk about it now. Are we going to bed then? His face lighted with anticipation. I hesitated for just an instant, but I had never been a first date kind of girl. I'm going to bed, I said. I think it's time for you to go. I went into the bathroom and did the usual things, taking my time brushing my teeth, hoping to give him time to find his way out, whatever that was. With the water running, I wouldn't have heard the door open or close. When I finished, there was no longer a man in my apartment, just Shadow curled up on the easy chair. I felt the smallest pain of regret, but I was sure the man of my dreams would come again. And of course, I was right.